Hey, what's happening, everybody? It's me, Crazyfrankie, and I'd like to welcome you to my Week 5 4 key game picks. Before we talk about Week number 5, I don't want to get into too much detail in Week number 4, which really was quite an somewhat of a interesting week it was. Obviously, the only things that came out of my mind that came out of Week number 4 is obviously, did the Packers start to reclaim their dominance now, in not just in their division, but possibly now the considered favorites now in the NFC. Tom Brady going back to New England in the Buccaneers uniform. Buccaneers barely beat the Patriots, and I look Chiefs back on track. Obviously, the Jaguars are a mess, but I think the bigger story outside of football is really Urban Meyer and his shenanigans, which really has become quite an embarrassment to the Jaguars franchise right now. I don't know how Urban Meyer has still a job when really all that stuff that he's been doing off the field, he should be fired for what he's doing. But I don't know how Khan is still letting him be the coach. And I look at some other things now. It's the Chargers beating the Raiders on a lightning show we had in LA on Monday, which was a bit interesting because I am in the Southern California area. And yeah, we had quite some lightning before that start of that Raiders-Chargers game, which actually was quite dominance by the Chargers when really, considering the fact that technically the Raider fans completely outnumbered the Charger fans. And it was quite interesting, to say the least, but I think the Chargers may have exposed the Raiders. When I look at it from the rest of week number 4, you got to wonder now, who is the favorite now in both conferences? I think that in the NFC right now, there really is no favorite right now because everybody is juggling around, whether it's the Buccaneers, whether it's the Packers, whether it was the Rams. And frankly, right now, with the Rams losing to the Cardinals last Sunday afternoon, and now it's hard to say now who is really the favorites going into that NFC conference. Tough to say. I mean, Cowboys are starting to make a case, but it's really, really hard to tell. Now, in the AFC right now, it's kind of the same thing. I mean, you would expect that Kansas City would have at least be 3-1 or possibly undefeated, but they've struggled through the 4 games of the season. They were fortunate enough to get a win over the Eagles. Chargers, of course, are making their own case, as well as the Raiders at being 3-1. But you got to also wonder about the Browns. The Bengals are making a case, even though their schedule is kind of favoring them a little bit. But people are forgetting the Buffalo Bills. Their last 2 games, both of them shutouts. They shut out the Dolphins. They shut out the the Washington football team. I almost said the former team name. But yeah, you got to start to make a case now whether if Buffalo's now making their case now as the best team in the AFC. So really tough to say right now in both conferences who is the favorite. Who is the favorite in both conferences to reach the Super Bowl? It's really too hard to say right now. But let's see how it plays out down the road for every NFL team right now, because everybody's now jockeying for position. Cardinals are the only undefeated team left in the NFL. And let's just see what happens now the rest of the way. Now, let's talk about week number 5, shall we? All right, let's begin with key game number 1, going back to the NFC West. It's the Thursday night game. It is the Rams versus the Seahawks. Rams are a slight 2.5-point favorite in this one. Don't be surprised if that number goes down to 2, maybe 1.5. Now, Stafford, 26 of 41, 280 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. And really just a terrible game he had against the Cardinals. Now, Wilson, in their victory over the 49ers, 16 of 23, 149 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions. When I look at one thing going into this matchup here, it's really Matthew Stafford. When it's time with the Lions, and they've only had, I think, 2. He's only played up there in Seattle, I think, 2 times. He's had trouble. He's had trouble playing in that stadium in Seattle, even though despite the fact that one game in Seattle where they got screwed out of the Lions got screwed out of a touchdown. or something like that. And it's just that Stafford has had some bad luck in Seattle. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean I'll quickly pick the Seahawks here, but let me make a case for the Rams in order to win this game. The Rams defense really needs to be much better than what they played against the Cardinals, because when they played against Arizona last week, they were flat. They didn't know what they were doing. And now you have to go up against Russell Wilson and his mobility and the Seahawks offense, even though their defense is struggling as well. I would say this is definitely going to be a back and forth game here. I don't consider this one to be one-sided. I really think that both teams' offense, I think this could be a shootout here. Remember the last time the Rams and Seahawks had quite a football game, and I think it was 2 years ago in Seattle, where it came down to the final. It came down to a last-second field goal in which the Seahawks won with the Rams missing the field goal. This game I consider a toss-up because I don't know how Matthew Stafford does in Seattle. Let's just see if his troubles continue up there, and the Rams struggling on offense to keep in sync right now. Let's just wait and see what happens here. It's definitely going to be a close game here, but I would say this game could be an all-out upset here. If the Rams defense continues their struggles as the way they did against Arizona, and now going on the road into Seattle, which is very, very difficult to play in. And I'm going to say this up front. This is definitely a toss-up here, but I'm actually going to go with the Seattle Seahawks. If the Rams defense struggles in this game as well and against Russell Wilson, I can see the Seahawks winning this game here. It'll definitely be a close game, especially on a short week for both these two teams. But I can see the Seahawks winning this game here if the Rams defense continues to struggle. Their offense really was out of sync, and that's another thing too. Their offense really has to get in sync because they're having enough trouble with the run as much as they are in the passing game. And I think it'll be a back and forth game, but I'm going to go with the Seahawks here. I think this will be a slight upset in this game here. I think the Rams' struggles might continue into this game, especially now the Seahawks trying to bounce back now after 2 straight losses before they beat the 49ers last week. So I'm going to pick the Seahawks here. This is not a sure pick here on this one here. I think the Rams will continue to have their defensive struggles as well as their offense here. I'm definitely going with the Seahawks in this one here. Seahawks over the Rams. Key game number 2, it is the Green Bay Packers versus the Cincinnati Bengals. It's been a long time since I've ever mention the Bengals in a 4 key game picks video. They're 3-1, but really their record shows that they played some easy opponents, even though they struggled last week against the Jaguars. Now the Packers have been fortunate enough to really beat up on a Pittsburgh Steelers team that really has lots of problems, and they were fortunate enough to beat the 49ers 2 weeks ago. And it's really and I look at it this way for both these two teams. Now, the Packers are a 3-point favorite in this one, and I would say that's just about right. Now, going into quarterback stats here, Rodgers, 20 of 36, 240 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Burrow in 25 of 32, 340 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions here. This is really going to be that the Bengals will have to really play their best game all season if they even want a chance to beat this Packer team. Aaron Rodgers is continuing his great play at quarterback in this last 2 weeks, and really this will kind of be an easy pick here because the Bengals defense really is not that good, and they've had issues in the secondary, and that's how they managed to get into a football game last week against the Jaguars when really the Bengals should have played much better than what they did last Thursday. This is going to be an easy pick here. This is probably going to be the easiest pick out of everything. The only reason why I'm considering this as a key game is because the Bengals are 3-1 as well as the Packers. So this is kind of a big deal for the Cincinnati Bengals as they're tied for first place with the Browns in that division. So it is really going to be interesting to see what happens now for the Cincinnati Bengals here. But I just don't think in this football game, Aaron Rodgers and the offense is going to really be all over this Bengals team, and you got to go with the Packers here. This is kind of an easy pick here. You got to go with the Green Bay Packers here. Packers over the Bengals. Key game number 3, the Cleveland Browns versus the Chargers. Baker Mayfield, 15 of 33, 155 yards, no touchdowns, and no interceptions. Justin Herbert in a big win against the Raiders, 25 of 38, 222 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no interceptions. A battle of two young quarterbacks that really, this game has the sights of being a shootout here in this game. The Browns last week weren't that impressive. Let's be real. They really struggled against the Vikings, and it is very difficult to say how they'll do against the Chargers. The Chargers defense really did a number on the Raiders last week, getting to Derek Carr 3 times. And the way their defense has played right now, this could pose problems for Baker Mayfield. He struggled against the Vikings defense here. Now I think you got to think about how he will do against the Chargers defense here. Chargers are a 2.5-point favorite in this one here. That number will probably go to 2. I could see that going down to 2, maybe 1.5. The Browns have to play flawlessly, and Baker Mayfield is going to have to really break that Chargers defense in order for the Browns to have a chance to win this game, even though the Chargers are a slight favorite. Now, Herbert played his best game so far of his career, and that was last week against the Raiders, and he's going to have to really do a great job on this Browns defense here. Now, I'm going to pick the Chargers here because I think their defense here will definitely get to Baker Mayfield. The Browns are struggling big time with their offensive line. The Vikings defense really got to Baker Mayfield a lot last week. And I just think with the way the Chargers defense has been playing, they are definitely going to get to Baker Mayfield in this game. This probably will be a game. I could see this being a football game. It could go back and forth here, but I like the Chargers in this one. I think the Chargers beat the Browns here. I think they will definitely get to Baker Mayfield, that Charger defense, the way they got to Carr last week, and I can see it happening again in this game here. I'm picking the Chargers here. Chargers over the Browns. And finally, key game number 4, the Sunday night game, the Buffalo Bills, the Kansas City Chiefs. Rematch of last year's AFC Championship. Josh Allen last week, 20 of 30, 240 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Now the Chiefs and Mahomes, 24 of 30, 278 yards, 5 touchdowns, and 1 interception. This is now going to be the Bills' biggest test. Now, even though the Kansas City Chiefs struggled in the last 4 games, but now this is where the Chiefs need to make a statement here in this game, as well as the Bills. The Bills were fortunate enough to play terrible opponents these last 3 games. So this is going to be quite interesting to see if this Bills defense can get to Patrick Mahomes this time. Because they had trouble in the AFC Championship last year getting to Mahomes. But now let's just see if this Bills defense can get to him this time. Now, the Chiefs are a 2.5-point favorite in this one here, and that number will definitely go down to 2, maybe 1.5. Bills offense really has to really expose that weak secondary that the Chiefs are having trouble with right now. Now, for the Chiefs to win, Mahomes has got to find a way to break through that Bills defense here, and I think he'll have to do it with his mobility. I could see this game going back and forth here. I think this is definitely going to be a good game on Sunday night here. Should be a good one here, but it's definitely a toss-up here. It's a hard pick here. You can't go wrong with either one here. But if I got to make a pick here, I think the Kansas City Chiefs will barely squeak out a victory against the Bills here. Both teams are, I would say in terms of defense, they're evenly matched. Bills defense, you could probably say they're slightly a little bit better here. But in terms of offense here, it's really going to determine to see which offense shows up in this game. Because both teams, the Bills offense has really dominated the last 3 games, and the Chiefs have struggled on offense as well. So it's really going to be tough to say here. But I think for home, I like the fact that the Chiefs, usually the Chiefs have a good home record here, and it's a new month in October, and I can see the Chiefs starting to bounce back here. It's a tough pick here, but I'm going to go with the Chiefs here. I think they'll barely beat the Bills here. A lot of it's going to determine how their offenses go here and which defense definitely gets to the quarterback here. But I think the Chiefs will barely beat the Bills in this game here. Should be a good one on Sunday night, but I'm definitely going with the Chiefs here. Chiefs over the Bills. All right, everybody, that wraps up my picks for week number 5. For all of my week 5 picks, please check the description below, and I'll talk to you guys next week when I make my picks for week 6. Take care and enjoy your football weekend.